Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Well, hello again, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on VoteProPot-Cast. I'm Phil Adams.
I'm Jay Britton.
I'm Andrew McCready's.
And today we're going to talk about a move to legalize recreational dispensaries in the District of Columbia.
Yay!
We're going to talk about the anti-marijuana movement and how it is a long way from dead. I'm going to fill you in on some of the characteristics of a reputable cannabis dispensary. We're going to hear about what the Big Four American pro sports leagues' stance is on cannabis. Drew's going to talk about, he's got a parrot story. I'm just going to leave it at that. We're going to talk about some huge sums of money being allocated towards cannabis research at some well-known colleges. The makers of Oreos and Chips Ahoy are ready to produce cannabis edibles, believe it or not. Drew's going to tell us about some cannabis products that apparently women prefer. But first, I have a story here about a little game that some Congressional Democrats were playing. They were competing in a marijuana-themed trivia game. Now, this story comes to us courtesy of Marijuana Moment. And apparently, some Democratic members of Congress got together for a cannabis quiz. That was part of a team-building exercise to unite, the party around certain goals. And the category in this case was called Green New Deal. Now, we know about that, but this is a little different Green New Deal. It's a play off the climate change legislation that was championed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York. But these questions are a little bit different than the climate change questions.
It's like Weed Jeopardy or something? What?
It's like Weed Jeopardy. Now, they weren't specifically policy-oriented. They were really just general knowledge of what, and I suppose these Democratic Congress people didn't really have any qualms about telling everybody just how much they knew about weed.
They must be listening to VoteProPot-Cast, huh?
I would like to think that they are.
They should.
So, and there's been a lot of cannabis-related legislation that has been introduced in the 116th Congress, I believe. And so they tested the lawmakers' basic understanding, cultural understanding of weed and the various ways that it's consumed. Now, the finalists came down to AOC from New York, believe it or not, Representative Katie Hill from California, and Ruben Gallego from Arizona. They made it into the final round. And one of the final questions was that two of them got right was a Democratic staffer told Marijuana. The question was phrased: "There are two main types of marijuana: indica and blank." And
Jesus.
they both knew, AOC and Katie Hill both knew that the answer was sativa. But now apparently there was another full round. There was a final question, and the only one who got this right was Congressman Gallego of Arizona. And the question was about a type of device that uses water or air pressure to quickly draw smoke. And Congressman Gallego knew that it was what he called a gravity bong.
Yep.
It was incorrectly reported that he said gravity bomb, B-O-M-B, but no, it's B-O-N-G. And so Representative Gallego was the winner.
He's the big winner, huh?
Yeah.
What did he win?
So,
an ounce of Kush? OG?
I think we should send the winner a prize from Vote Pro Pot.
I like it. I like it. I'd say the winner has been listening to our show regularly. It's obvious.
So the guy won because he knew to cut the bottom off a 2-liter soda bottle, put a bowl in the top, put it in a bucket of water, fill it with weed, light it, and pull it up out of the water. And as the water leaves the bottle, it sucks smoke in. And then you push it back down, and it shoots the smoke out the top.
Somebody has been listening to Vote Pro Podcast, I'm saying.
Well, no. So somebody was in a dorm room and couldn't find papers or a pipe. All they had was a soda bottle. It's aluminum foil.
I remember those tall boy bongs.
So he won with Gravity Bong. He won a trip to Washington, D.C., all paid for by the taxpayers.
Of course.
So,
Congratulations.
Of course, they all got that prize, so, what are you going to do? If you have any ideas about this, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to propose a trivia game of your own, or just any comments, corrections, suggestions, check us out at VoteProPot.com.
And please send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com or call our message line at 240-257-2441, and we'll put you on the show.
And please like and follow us and make comments on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Just do a search for Vote Pro Pot.
And there's one more thing we would love for you to do is just to go to Apple Podcast and give us a rating. And we would love it if you gave us a 5-star rating. That would certainly help us out. Now, there's some movement in the cannabis front right here in our nation's capital. Jay, you've got some information on that?
Yeah, again, we do our show, and we grew up right here at Ground Zero, Washington, D.C. Today, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser announced legislation she's putting forth to regulate recreational marijuana dispensaries here in the nation's capital and setting up a potential showdown with the federal government because Andrew's talked about before, and we've discussed on the show, the situation in D.C. They do have a medical program. You can possess, you can grow weed, you can have weed, but you can't sell it. And that's because the Congress won't allow the funding. And in fact, the way the law's written now, it states that the D.C. Council can't even have hearings on it. So Muriel Bowser announced the day after the election, due to the Democratic Congress coming in, that she was going to put forth this legislation for hearings and for discussion. So it's interesting. I'm just going to go through real quick kind of some of the bullet points that she's announced today that the program's going to offer. She wants to rename the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration and task the agency with licensing and overseeing the marijuana business of dispensaries. The city...
What are they going to change the name to?
They didn't say yet. That's going to be part of the hearing. One of the things that did come out of this is people in D.C. don't get too anxious. It's going to be a while. They have to have hearings, and of course they have to negotiate these laws, and then they have to get the money because right now Congress isn't allowing it. Isn't funding it.
They can't use federal money.
They can't use federal money.
The government, the Congress is like D.C.'s governor. Everything has to go through them.
Yeah.
So what they said was you can't use any federal money to set up a legal system. And then they came back and said you can't use any money. But now since the Democratic Congress came in, it's back to what it was where they can't use federal money, but now there's a loophole.
But they can raise their own money if they can.
Right. And also they have a medical system already in place. So it's not like they're starting from scratch. It's going to be pretty easy, And also D.C. is not that big.
Well, here's some of the points in her legislation, which of course has to be discussed and ironed out over the next so many months. She said that she's hoping that something can happen within the next year. But anyway, the city's 8 medical marijuana cultivation centers will be authorized to grow recreational purposes. Regulators will issue additional licenses within 6 months after the law takes effect. Marijuana businesses will not be concentrated in a specific neighborhood, but will be spread out, and they will have to have discrete signage. So in other words, it's not going to be a big circus. The minimum age will be 21. They'll crack down on the attempts to avoid the existing restrictions on selling marijuana by offering it as a gift. And we've talked about that on the show. Now you can go out and buy a T-shirt, and I'm making air quotes, for, $150, and you get a free gift, which is a half an ounce or whatever,
Right.
So they're going to restrict.
Andrew, wasn't you that said they'll sell you a pencil?
That's it.
For $60,
Yep.
and then you get some weed.
You get
with
an
it.
eighth or something. That's right. There's going to be she proposes a 17% sales tax, with a good portion of it going to low-income housing. That's kind of her goal. A couple more here. Home delivery will be permitted, so that's very cool. It does not allow for smoking at open, like at rooftop bars or sidewalk patios or private businesses, but it would give regulators an opportunity to allow marijuana consumption at dispensaries or at hookah lounges. And the home growing thing, which is allowed now, a home growing in the separate medical marijuana program that's already in place will be separated from the recreational, but will still be there. And patients will pay a much lower tax than the recreationals, which I don't get, Andrew. I mean, why would you go buy recreational? Why wouldn't you just get your card and go?
That's how it is in Colorado.
So I guess for people who don't want to get their medical card.
People who have legitimate medical reasons for buying cannabis don't have to pay the sin tax.
Right. But I'm saying, why would you not get a card?
Because they're not sinning. They're actually
because maybe you're young and healthy.
So
now, what I don't understand is if you can grow it in D.C., how do they separate growing for medical or growing for adult use?
Well, growing's legal for whatever you want. I mean, you can grow weed for recreational if you want now. You just, you don't have, you can have up to 6 plants or something per person per home or whatever.
6 plants, and you can carry up to 2 ounces. And the thing about DC, even if since recreational is legalized, and if they do set up a dispensary system, still, if you walk across the wrong street and step foot on federal land, and you're carrying, the federal police can arrest you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, they can.
The final note, bullet point I have picked up here is that the bill would automatically seal the records of people with misdemeanor marijuana possession convictions, and which would supposedly allow them to work and within the industry or just it's not good if they go out to get a job. It's not going to pop up on their records. So,
that's a big one.
Yeah. So way to go, DC. Like way to go, Mary.
Yeah. We'll hopefully keep tabs on that. It's like you say, it's going to be a slow boat to China on that one, but we're going to get there, hopefully.
Well, Mayor Bowser is definitely pro-cannabis. When I was volunteering with the D.C. Cannabis Campaign, I was standing on Connecticut Avenue by the Chevy Chase Community Center with my legalized sign, and at that point, she was a candidate, and she walked up, shook my hand, and introduced herself, and we sat and talked for a while.
Nice.
Yeah, she's really sharp, man. She's really sharp.
She really is.
She really, I got to. She gave
and
really
the council is pro cannabis as well. So it's
DC City Council definitely. It's the Congress that
the block is really Congress, exactly.
Of course, that doesn't mean that there won't be pushback. There is still a very strong anti-cannabis contingent out there, isn't that right?
That's right. As a matter of fact, I have a couple stories here that sort of are all about the same issue, I believe, and that is that the anti-reform, anti-marijuana people are still pushing back, and they're pushing back hard, and they're getting a lot of money to support them, and they're vicious, and they're relentless, and they will. And even though they know they'll engage in an argument, they know they're going to lose, they just sit and throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Like, for example, there's a 36-year-old retired U.S. Army major who served 2 tours in Iraq, year-long tours, and served 1 tour in Afghanistan, has 4 Bronze Stars. Now, he left the service, and although I think he might have been in the reserves, I'm not sure, it doesn't say. But he has 11 years military service, and I guess he was trying to guess, if you're in the reserves, you can eventually get to your 20 years and get your pension. And even still, being an ex-military, you still have, benefits. Well, anyway, he got a job with a cannabis company in an administrative, capacity. I mean, he doesn't handle cannabis, he doesn't move it, doesn't process it. But anyway, they took away when the Army found out, they took away all of his retirement benefits.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yep. Right. And this guy went to West Point.
Harsh, man.
I mean, he's a West Point graduate. I mean, 4 Bronze Stars. I mean, this guy is not just some, private that worked.
Wow, that's
that's
nuts.
one case of even the vets. They're going after the vets. They're going to anyone who's pro-cannabis, they're going to go after. Now, also, the Trump administration has come out and said, we oppose medical marijuana for military veterans, period. Mm-hmm. And they said it's not, it doesn't correspond with the philosophy of the or the integrity of the Army. Really. So these guys, walking around with 100-pound packs in over 100-degree heat in the desert, getting shot at and blown up, and they come back here and they test positive for marijuana, and you're crucified.
It's fine to get a prescription for opioids or whatever, but
they're not in the Army anymore. They're veterans,
right?
They're veterans, right? Well, still, they're veterans, so they still get Army benefit.
Well, they get veteran benefits, right?
Yeah. Now another example.
So they'll cut off the veteran benefits.
Now here's another example. TSA agents in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport have just cracked down on anyone carrying CBD product.
Really?
So yeah, there was a guy. There was a 72-year-old lady, and she goes, "Yeah, I have these CBD drops for pain," and she got arrested and charged with a felony and locked up. They also arrested a 21-year-old guy who had an e-cartridge that he bought at a Dallas store, and he goes to the airport in Dallas and they arrest him. And he's like, "But I bought it a couple of miles away."
That's nuts. We've done stories here before, Andrew, about how TSA is pretty lax. So have they changed kind of their philosophy, or?
Well, it's like you don't hear that about LAX, but you heard about there's certain states that I think
that makes sense.
But although this is a TSA, they're federal. I mean, I'm not sure. Although when they catch you, they call in the local authorities to arrest you. Right. Well, everyone who's pro-reform are starting to get a little comfortable, I think, and I really believe that now's not the time to get comfortable, because these people, they have not given up. They're doubling down.
They're hunkering down.
Millions upon millions.
I think that's a great lesson. Yeah.
No kidding.
Stay vigilant.
Yep. Stay on top.
So let's keep our eye on this and let's make some noise.
Now here's an article from one of my favorites, Leafly.com. And for those of you who are now, we were just talking about the move to legalize recreational dispensaries in D.C. There are, well, like anything else, there are dispensaries and there are dispensaries. And how do you know if you are dealing with a reputable dispensary? Well, there are a few things that you can check out when you first step through the door, and it'll give you a good idea of what type of experience you're going to have. Mm-hmm. For example, and these are things to consider when you're shopping around. Now, I know in my neighborhood there's 3 or 4 different ones, and and I think, Andrew, you can attest to the fact that around here there are some that are just plain better than others.
Yeah.
But one thing to look at is the ambiance. Many pieces come together to create a great atmosphere at a dispensary. And all of these things you'll be able to see it when you first go in. The interior design, the lighting, is there music playing? Is there merchandise, on display? The staff and how they present themselves. All of these things kind of come together to create a mood. Now, I don't recall any of them that had music playing, but for example, there are some that have an outer area where you can purchase CBD and other legal products, and you don't even need a card to go in.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's in Maryland.
In Maryland.
That's in Maryland. Mm-hmm. And if you do have your card, then you go into the kind of sanctum sanctorum in there, and you can purchase THC goods. But all of these things kind of will give you an idea of whether it's the place for you.
Right.
You want to have friendly and knowledgeable staff. That's kind of the the job of the bud tender. You want someone who's friendly, who's patient, who will, offer you recommendations, listen to what you have to say. A well-trained bud tender should be knowledgeable about not only all the product that they have, but all the various types of cannabis products, how people consume them, and be able to answer your questions. Another thing is having a broad menu selection. Are they well stocked in, not just flour, but oils and sublinguals and other products? Do they have a good, a wide selection?
Well, also, I think you want to go to a dispensary that as far as flour is concerned, someone that someone that moves product, because flowers dry out. There's a shelf life on them. So you want something that's freshly cured, and if you go to a dispensary that doesn't sell a lot of flour, you might end up getting some old dry stuff that's lost its flavor and aroma. Yeah, but yeah, there's a I find in Maryland, what happened was in the medical is the people, they open up their dispensaries and either they really embrace the medical aspect of it, or they kind of embrace the cannabis culture. Mm-hmm. Now here in Maryland, herbology, they have a nice thing. They've really sort of embraced the culture, and you go in there and a lot of the bud tenders will have or in T-shirts and, there's they're younger, piercings and tattoos and all that, which is great. And and matter of fact, one of the best bud tenders I ever had in Maryland worked at the herbology in Gaithersburg. This guy was great. Really? And but he was younger and I think someone older may not relate to him. But then some of them just really embrace the medical. You go in there and it's like a doctor's office. I mean, and they're practically wearing lab coats. And there's consultation rooms, and and sometimes they'll have like yoga studios where they offer other health benefits, other than just
I've
cannabis.
noticed some of them look like an Apple store, it's like, damn, or a doctor's office. And some of them look
they're
like
very clean and sanitary looking, and some are just, retail.
Some of them look like my parents' basement when we used to rehearse in the band in the old days, I mean, it's just like night and day. So
right. And now some dispensaries also sell accessories. Now, this is not so much in Maryland because these are kind of adult use type things, but some of them are pipes, vapes, dab rings, grinders, torches, papers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now that's, your stores in Colorado are going to have those, as well as edibles, and which is something that we don't have here in Maryland. But a wide and deep menu. Can you get the right combination in the product that you're using, whether it's an oil or a flour? Are you can they offer you something that has the right ratio of THC to CBD? Do they have the tinctures that in the varieties that you want? So those are the kinds of things you want to look at. You also want to look at the price point, of course. Passing off the savings to the customers is not always an easy thing, especially in stores that are just getting started, or where legalization is a kind of a new thing. But you want dispensaries that give their customers a reason to return, and one of these may be competitive price points.
Well, what I've seen with dispensaries is that the ones that are embracing the medical aspect tend to be a little bit more expensive and really offer very little, if any, sales. Now, there's other dispensaries. There's one in Maryland that started off smaller, but then they quickly, like within a few months, moved to a bigger location, and they built like a CBD counter in the public area and tons of rolling papers and paraphernalia. It's like, Bud Bong and beyond.
Right. Now, and I think that's not uncommon because the cost of entry for a dispensary is huge. Yeah. And, you'll get into the business with a really modest store, but, you'll start making some profit pretty quickly. And then, boom, you're able to expand. So I think that's going to be, if it's not already fairly commonplace to see. Yeah. And finally, what they say is a dispensary that stands out is one that's involved in community outreach. A lot of dispensaries promote themselves through that, offering services other than cannabis products, and just being part of the community. Things like adopting highways for cleanup, participation in fairs, donation drives and fundraisers, promoting podcasts. That's a really good thing to do.
That's a great thing to do.
And many of these offer them, often free in-house services for customers and patients. Things like wellness services, aromatherapy, recipes, for cooking with cannabis. So there's a whole lot of ways that dispensaries kind of distinguish themselves. And, as this space becomes more crowded, it's going to become more competitive, and the cream's going to rise to the top.
A few things. A few years ago, I went to a Cannabis Expo in Las Vegas, and Ben from Ben & Jerry's spoke. And he came up with an idea that I had already planned. I was putting together a business plan to get a license in Maryland at the time. And he said, you should start a B Corp. And part of the money you make from your company, whether it be a grower, dispensary, or a processor, part of the money you make, you should dedicate, what benefit corporations are, dedicate part of their percentage of the profits to go to environmental and social issues in their community. And and so I could see just this industry, just naturally, just sort of the organic feel of the cannabis culture, they gravitate towards philanthropic issues.
Sure.
Which is something that's we all know is kind of near and dear to Ben and Jerry's heart.
Right.
Exactly. So I should say it might have been Jerry. I'm not sure. It's either Ben or Jerry. It's one of the two.
I can never tell those two
really
apart,
matter.
man.
They're kind of like Siamese twins.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing? Oh, I'm Ben. Oh, yeah, I knew that, man. I knew that.
And also, I think in the future, you're going to start seeing more different types of dispensaries. I think the ones like, especially when it opens up for adult use. Now, right now, we have really just more the cannabis culture and the medical. You're going to see the medical sort of expand into more like holistic endeavors. They're going to, and then you're going to see
healing centers
in commercial adult use. They're going to start mixing their merchandise, and you're going to be seeing all kinds of stuff. And also, you're going to be some targeted towards more of an upscale, Upper West Side type of person, or there might be some more in a college town that's going to go more towards the younger people, and you're going to start seeing maybe dispensaries in certain areas, especially areas that don't want retail cannabis. You might see some operations that just do 100% delivery.
That's right. This is what Cody Sanchez was talking about last week with premiumization. Really setting yourself apart in your market niche. With value added stuff. The adult use we're going to see a lot of more drinks, infused drinks, and other recreational products. So and like you say, the upscale Francis Ford Coppola type products. It's a new industry, and it's going to be taking shape the way many industries do.
All right, all you sports folks out there, Leafly had a great article a couple days ago, Keeping Score, Major League Sports Stance on Cannabis. And they go through the four big leagues in North America: hockey, basketball, baseball, and football. And compares the four and how they each see and treat cannabis use. Start with hockey. Hockey is one of the more liberal out of the four. And a lot of that, I think, is probably because so many of the cities that host hockey teams are in either legal United States cities or they're in Canada. So that's one of the reasons. But it says, compared to other professional sports leagues in North America, the NHL is lenient when it comes to cannabis. The league doesn't test its players for street drugs in the offseason. And during the regular season, it tests only 1/3 of its players at random. And those who test positive just have to do a little bullshit substance abuse program. The league considers cannabis a, quote, drug of abuse, unquote, but players are not disciplined for having trace amounts in their system. So, hockey.
And which league is this?
This hockey. This is hockey.
NHL.
That's right. And they interview a lot of players. I'm not going to read all this, but there's some really interesting stuff in here. They interview Riley Coate, and he's very pro-cannabis, and he's in the movement to take it off the list completely for testing in the NHL. He says, in his opinion, about 90% of the players in hockey and the NHL use cannabis. And what I find really interesting about this article, they interview several players and coaches and people. Cannabis is really pervasive in pro sports because so many players, the hangover and the side effects of so many of the drugs they're prescribed for pain are just so hard to deal with.
Alcohol.
Exactly. And they talk about that in here. Let's move on to football. Football obviously is different. It's pretty stringent at this point. Players are tested once in the offseason, and during the regular season, 10 players per team are randomly selected each week for testing. Wow. Yeah, and if they have 35 nanograms of cannabis in their system, a THC per milliliter in the system, they have to go to a substance abuse program. Second time and third time violations lead to huge fines, and a subsequent violation results in suspension. So they're very strict about it at this point. But so many players say, look, you don't know how much pain we're in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every week. I'd much rather sit in a hot tub or a cold tub and smoke a joint than take a bunch of opiates or whatever painkillers they want to give me. Right. So Major League Baseball is a little better. The league is not as tough on cannabis as the NFL because its players' union has opposed strict punishment for smoking weed since 2002. The NLB tests players for drug use only if there's a probable cause. So they don't do random testing. I don't know what probable cause is
like
for
that.
weed, The guy was laughing a lot in the dugout and watching cartoons. I don't know. Those who test positive for more than 50 nanograms of THC per milliliter in their urine are subject to a treatment plan and as much as a $35,000 fine. So it is a pretty hefty fine. But they don't face suspension unless they violate the terms of any treatment programs they are required. So it's hard to get kicked out of baseball for smoking weed. Lastly is the basketball, NBA. The NBA established a drug policy in the 80s, back when cocaine was widespread. A decade later, many of the league stars developed a reputation for smoking weed. In response, the league started testing for cannabis in 2000. But there is speculation that as many as 80% of NBA players are using the banned substance on a regular basis. But they're strict. I mean, they do random testing. All players are subject to 4 random tests per season, and those who test positive for at least 15 nanograms, which is very low, of THC in their urine, are required to enter a substance abuse program. They're fined $25,000 for a second violation, or suspended 5 games for a third. So 5 games is big bucks, man. When you're in the NBA or any pro sport, for that matter.
Well, how many games do they play a season?
Shit, I don't know. Basketball, Phil, do you know? You're more of a sports guy than us.
I don't know. It's 82 in the NHL. It's 162 in Major League.
Yeah,
It's 16 in the NFL. I don't remember how many.
I don't either.
It's probably closer to the NHL.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Number, or it's probably more than 100. I can't remember.
5 days off is 5 game suspension is like getting 2 weeks off.
Right.
Without pay.
So they're fined $25,000 for a second violation, and they're suspended 5 games for a third. 5 more games are added for each subsequent violation. So, however, change seems to be in the wind for the National Basketball Association. In a dramatic about-face, former Commissioner David Stern now says the league should not ban cannabis. 5 months ago...
Period.
5 months ago, the current commissioner said the league might soon change its cannabis policy. So there's hope in the future for the NBA as well. They may just, again, get rid of it completely. To wrap up...
That would be nice.
What about the Olympics?
Well, they don't get into the Olympics in here. There's a lot of talk. I've read some articles about this very subject's being discussed. The problem, I think, probably with the Olympics is some of the countries involved are pretty anti-drug, pretty anti-cannabis, you know? I mean, you've got...
I think with the Olympics, it's more about performance enhancement than it is about weed. That's what they really cracking down on.
I think you're right.
What about the PGA?
I don't know.
Because I really know that golf and cannabis pair very well
perfect,
together.
Man.
They do go together.
Or what about pro bowling?
How can you bowl and not be stoned? Come on. Who would go bowling?
You got to be stoned to wear one of those bowling shirts, right, Phil?
That's for sure. The shoes.
I love those bowling shirts, man. I think they're the coolest.
Actually, or pro bass fishing. That's a big one I think they should go after. But actually, seriously, NASCAR. What about NASCAR? I bet those guys, it's probably not even an issue because they don't even.
No, you can't drive
drink and do
anything. Hummed out of your brain, man.
I mean, you should be sober as can be, the month before a big race,
There you go.
Interesting.
Sports.
Beach volleyball. Really? Beach volleyball?
What are you just sitting there thinking of sports we haven't talked about yet? Shit.
I think, there's sports that means you got come on. You got to get, seriously.
How about Frisbee golf? Who the fuck?
How about professional chess? Ugh. I think Boris Spassky was stoned when he lost to Bobby Fischer. I don't know. You got to do a lot of deep thinking.
What about Jeopardy? Remember a couple years ago when Cheech Marin was on Jeopardy and he was up against
he crushed
Anderson Cooper and who was the other one? I forgot. The other went to Stanford and he annihilated him. He crushed him.
Killed him, man.
I got a story that should enrage Jimmy Buffett fans. All you parrot heads out there. Apparently, in Brazil, police raided a suspected drug dealer, and when they went to raid the house, the dealer's parrot warned him that the police were raiding the house.
What?
Apparently, he yelled, "Mama, police," in Portuguese. So they raided the house. They found some marijuana and a lot of cash. So they arrested him, but they took the parrot into custody.
What?
Yeah.
They put little handcuffs on him or what?
They put him in a lineup?
They questioned him, but he wouldn't sing.
Is this the bird you were doing?
They questioned him, but he wouldn't sing.
Yeah, he wouldn't sing.
Yeah, apparently he won't talk.
Good.
Apparently they said he won't talk, and apparently, I don't know. But seriously, police really taking a bird into custody? That's just...
I think they just wanted the bird.
Now, there's something going on in South America. Was it Brazil or Argentina where the police were under investigation because some marijuana was missing from the evidence locker? And they said mice ate it. And they said a half a ton.
Yeah, right.
Mice ate 1,000 pounds. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
The dog.
I think that's some messed up mice, man.
Sounds like the cops in South America are smoking weed themselves.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge sum of money going into supporting cannabis research at a couple of colleges. Both of them are in Massachusetts. I may have heard of one of these, a couple of these. One is called Harvard University.
Yeah, I've heard
University.
of that. I've heard of it.
And one is called MIT. Oh, no, that's MIT, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Two of the most prestigious educational institutes in the world, or certainly in the country, will split a grant totaling $9 million.
That's great.
A donation intended to support cannabis research.
Awesome.
They'll be performing quality control research, which is typically a very expensive and difficult process, as the federal government continues to throw roadblocks in front of universities trying to do it. Currently, researchers are looking to study cannabis have to source all of their product through a single, and we've talked about this before, a single government-approved cultivator, and I believe that one is out of Kentucky. And Andrew, you know about this.
Yeah, they're out of Kentucky, and a new study just came out where they actually analyzed the cannabis that the government's been growing for research, and they say that compound profile is closer to hemp than it is medical marijuana.
Closer to hemp?
Yep. So they're growing just beetweed. Just like,
so it's worthless basically for research or close to it.
It's definitely not effective. But
not only that, the process is often long, and the cannabis they come up with, like you say, is nothing compared to what people are actually using.
So what weed are they going to be using for these tests, Phil?
So they want to bypass federal government buying cannabis from the single state source.
Excellent.
As MIT professor of brain and cognitive sciences John Gabrielli said, a fast-changing regulatory environment means that with the secure private funding, researchers can access high-quality legal cannabis and perform research with little concern.
That's awesome.
So that means that research scientists, can really finally get down to the business of figuring out this thing called marijuana, which, as we've said many, many times, that's the key to everything.
That's the key to everything.
Is the research.
Serious research, yeah.
Isn't there... there's got to be some research that they can do without actually using marijuana that they can do without using the actual product. I mean, but for example, taking in people who've been using for years and
studying them,
studying them, and or also just the process. Maybe research into breaking down the compounds, which isn't really medical. Which is more probably of a machine. Developing a machine to do or a process.
Yeah, but I think what they want to do now, one of the donors, Charles Broderick, founder of investment firm Uji Capital, he said, according to the Boston Globe, quote, "The lack of basic science research enables people to make claims in a vacuum that are either anecdotal or based on old science." He said, "For generations, we haven't been able to study this for various sorts of societal reasons. That should end now, as well as the prohibitions that are falling around the world." And I think he's absolutely right that without, the scientific research to counter it, people have been able to make all kinds of spurious claims about cannabis and how dangerous it is.
Or vice versa, it cures everything from, hemorrhoids to cancer,
Right, that is a panacea, and neither is really true.
Right.
There are 100 or more, what is the number, Andrew, different cannabinoid compounds?
It's hundreds.
70 some different types of terpenes. I mean, there's so much to know. And we're just kind of cracking the surface. So this is a good development. $9 million is probably going to go a long way to support this cannabis research.
And I think we're going to see more and more of this, and it's going to make such a huge difference. Because it's going to, real studies coming out of MIT and Harvard are going to change the minds of so many people who just read an article saying that, it cures this and it cures that, and it's a miracle drug. But it's all anecdotal.
And when they say, well, where'd you get that? Oh, I don't know, a little place called Harvard.
That's right. Yeah, not just I saw it on the internet, man.
A little place called MIT. You might have heard of those.
The internet's never wrong.
Never wrong.
Well, also they're both in Massachusetts, where recreational is legal now.
Right.
So
they can
just go down to the corner and score some.
That's why I really could see how some growers or some processors in Maryland could start setting up deals with like University of Maryland Research or Johns Hopkins or Walter Reed or HEW
absolutely.
or NIH or the National,
HEW is federal,
National Cancer Institute. I mean, one of the largest cancer research facilities is here in Frederick, Maryland.
That's right.
Yep. I got a hankering for some cookies. I don't know about you.
I got this article out of Civilized. Civilized, Calvin Hughes, who we read a lot of his stuff. Oreo says they're getting ready to produce cannabis edibles. What is that?
It's my packet of Oreos.
Ah, okay. Andrew did a story on Hack a couple weeks ago, remember? On how to make Oreos. How to make edible.
They were great.
Yeah, they were awesome. Anyway, okay. This guy, this is from an interview on CNBC the other day. A company called Mandela's, you may not have heard of, but they're the company that makes Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy cookies, Maynard candies, and several other products. They are preparing to start making marijuana edibles. This guy, the CEO, Dirk Van de Putte, says they soon could be getting into the marijuana game themselves by introducing some cannabis-infused goodies. He says that they're planning on making snacks infused with non-intoxicating cannabis compound CBD, which has become an increasingly trendy wellness product in recent months. What he goes on to say here is that for now, they're just looking at CBD for legal reasons and federal legality reasons.
Right.
But it's not going to be in Oreos and it's not going to be in Chips Ahoy. They're going to have a separate line of products. So I thought it was a good article because we're always trying to let everybody know when these new infused edibles and drinks and so forth are coming out by big companies. We've talked about Pepsi and Coke and Molson and Coors, and now we're looking at Oreos, baby. So I can drink Coors with my Oreos and catch a buzz.
Dunk them in your beer.
Well, the edible market's going to be booming.
Oh,
there's going to be billions spent in the next 10 years. So it only stands to reason the experts in snack food are going to get into it. And another thing I predict about companies like that or startup, I think you're going to start seeing, like in dispensaries, people selling not edibles, not food that isn't infused with marijuana, but food that is just awesome munchies.
Right.
You know? Just these are the ultimate, like when you went to Blockbuster to rent a video, they were selling popcorn and goobers.
That's true.
And goobers at the checkout. So, you're just like weed, and you looked down and went,
I like Junior Mints. Those are my favorites.
You got maple bacon something, pumpkin, and there's no cannabis
salty
in it. It's
sweet.
It's salty sweet stuff, man. I think there's going to be a market in that. See, and that's when I'm talking about dispensaries. I think dispensaries are going to start mixing their merchandise, so you're going to start seeing, something's going to catch on that all dispensaries are going to start selling. The
impulse buys.
Well, I remember reading that back when Blockbuster was big. The biggest chunk of their revenue came from selling shit besides videos. I mean, it was
the snacks, right?
It was selling the candy bars and the popcorn and all that shit. That's where their big bucks was coming in, not from selling a video for $3.
Like crazy.
Right.
I know, but had they legalized cannabis 20 some odd years ago?
Oh, can you imagine it?
Imagine going to a store where you could get cannabis and a video.
Right. Blockbuster might still be in business.
So I don't know. Maybe you'd say those little red kiosks, those little red boxes that rent.
DVDs.
Redbox.
Man, you got to start sticking those. We got to stick those in dispensaries. Hello, Redbox people. You can send me a commission check for that idea.
Oh, they're gone. They're out of business now with downloading. I mean, unless you go to bumfuck Idaho or something.
Everything's streaming.
There's one in front of the gas station I go to.
People still rent DVDs?
Yeah, I see people going up to it all the time.
I guess so. They still have their players.
Ever heard of Netflix? Oh, my God.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Vote Pro Podcast. If you did, there's a couple of things you could do for us if you want to be really swell. One is to tell a friend or two about it who may be interested in downloading one of our episodes. Pass the word along. Another thing you could do, really help us out, is go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. I think we're worth. What do you guys think? I think we're worth 5 stars, right?
6.5 if you ask me. But
they don't. It only goes up to 5. So you don't have to worry. 5-star rating. We would love for you to do that. More importantly, we want you to make sure you stay involved, keep informed, stay on top of what's going on. And one of the great ways to do that is to check us out at VoteProPot.com.
And we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com. Call our message line at 240-257-2441, and we'll put you on the show.
Phil, did you just say it would be swell if you did that?
If you want to be a really swell guy or gal,
what decade are you from, dude?
Same decade as you.
Hey, and please like and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Just do a search for Vote Pro Pot.
Wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe. Smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. But here I am in New York City, hiding out in Central Park, getting kidnapped by the police today sometime before dark. But I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. The judge looked down upon me, frowned. He said, kid, get on your way. Just don't start out your morning with espresso and a J. I said, I wish I was up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. Hitched on out to Portland, caught a ride up to BC, took the bus over to the neighborhood to have a bowl with my coffee. Now I'm up in Vancouver at the Cannabis Cafe, smoking good old Sensimilla at the beginning of the day. Smoking good old Sensimilla